Today we're taking a look at the new GH5. Welcome to Film Riot, the show takes mystery out of the effects techniques, going to some of your favorite Hollywood films. I'm your host, Ryan Conley, and the GH5 has been the source of a lot of talk lately, and for good reason. It's a very interesting and well-priced camera. Not to mention the GH4 was a big deal for a lot of people, and thanks to Lens Pro To Go, I had the GH5 for a week to try out, so that is exactly what we're going to do today. But before we jump into the type of image you can pull from this camera, let's check out that sexy body. Right off the bat, to me, the GH5 feels much better than the GH4. It feels more solid, with better buttons, joystick, and the dial right here. Big improvements over the GH4 in my opinion. I really dig how the buttons and dials are laid out too. Everything that I need to change quickly and often are easily accessible and feel very intuitive. I was using all the functions right off the bat with zero learning curve, as if I had used the camera before. On the side, we have our SD slot with dual SD card slots, which apparently are hot swappable, so theoretically you're supposed to be able to record forever without stopping. So, you know, if you're stuck in an infinite time loop, you're in luck. You also have your mic and headphone jacks, and now a full-sized HDMI port and USB-C port. Of course, we have the swivel screen with a really solid LCD, which is also touchscreen, and a very responsive touchscreen at that. The menu system is really intuitive as well, definitely one of the easier to navigate and understand, one of the best that I've used after Blackmagic and Canons, I'd say. But right up front, on the display, before even going into the menu, we have quick access to the essential functions like white balance, ISO, shutter speed, picture profile, and record settings. You have some impressive options like 10-bit 422 at full 4K. To put that into perspective, on the Sony A7s II, you only have 420 at 8-bit. And this 10-bit 422 is recording all in camera for the GH5. It's really surprising and entirely awesome thing to have in this kind of a camera. You also have flavors of 8-bit along with UHD and 1080, of course. And just to point out, the 10-bit files don't currently import natively into the latest version of Premiere. I'm sure they'll have a fix for this soon, but at the moment, the most current version of Premiere won't work with it, but if you version back, you can. But we'll get into the image more in a minute. Inside the actual menu here, we have our different sections, which we need to kick the dial into video mode to access some of these features. But one exciting thing here is the anamorphic function. This puts you in 4:3 mode so you can properly use anamorphic lenses. Then you have variable frame rates, which can only be accessed at certain record modes. At 4K, you can go up to 60 frames per second, but if you swap to 1080, you can go as high as 180 frames per second. And it really is solid slow motion, but we'll get to that in a minute. Then you have vector scopes and waveforms, which is nice to have, but they're way too big and intrusive to actually keep on. Moving down in menus, you'll find record format, which you have the options of AV, CHD, MP4, or MOV. Then quality, which we already looked at. Autofocus, which I didn't use because I only had manual lenses. I've heard a lot of negative things about the autofocus here, but honestly, unless you're filming yourself for a vlog, I don't know why you would be using it anyway. I can't remember the last time I touched autofocus. It's nice to have just in case, but not a deal breaker for me. We also have our picture profiles, all the ones you'd expect, including Vlog, and our stabilization, which is great, but has a caveat that we'll get to in a minute. And the last thing I'll mention from the menu is the built-in limiter, which is also a very nice plus. And speaking of audio and vlogging, if you do vlog and in-camera audio is important to you, this one is pretty good.
Hey, I'm looking at the camera and talking about battery station we're setting up over here, but I'm gonna look there because I wouldn't want to do that.
Hi, I'm looking in the camera and talking, and Josh is a really stupid idiot.
I'm not hearing the actual inner camera functions that you do with a lot of these cameras, so that's good, but it is a bit tinny and gets more of the sound from the operator than the subject. I was even hearing my breathing at times, so keep that in mind. You still really want to have something like a Rode VidMic to throw on a camera like this. But that is the body and the menu. Now a quick break, and then we get into image quality. If you're a budding filmmaker, entrepreneur, or innovator, domain.com is the place to go when that next idea hits you. When you get a domain name from domain.com, you're taking the first steps in creating an identity and vision for your brand or idea. The world's top two premier and most recognized domain extensions are .com and .net, which means those are the ones that are going to help you build your brand and expand your presence online the best. Of course, domain.com is reliable, affordable, and easy to use, but to give you some love, and they're giving you 25% off their already affordable prices when you get domain names, web hosting, and email. Just use the coupon code FilmRiot at domain.com's checkout. When you think domain names, think domain.com.
Logo.
So let's dive right back in with a look at the quality you can get out of this camera. again, since you guys are always asking, the music I used here for the montage was from Artlist, which we've talked about on the show a few times. It's a music licensing site that is probably some of the cheapest that you can possibly get, with a huge library of quality songs. I put a link to that in the notes below. I also did an episode that shows how I use the site to find music for my projects, so you can watch that if you want. And I put the name for the artist and the song that we use there too. So, okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
I have to say, I am crazy impressed. I really dug shooting with this. It didn't feel like it got in my way at all. It wasn't frustrating at all to use like other mirrorless and DSLR type cameras, and the LCD is pretty great. One main issue was pulling focus with this. It was a little difficult to tell what was and wasn't in focus through the viewfinder, and I was outside in the sun, so I couldn't fully rely on the LCD either. So I had to have peaking on, which solved my issue, but made it a little difficult to monitor exposure at that point. So I had to be switching back and forth with the peaking on and off, which was a little bit annoying. But one of my absolute favorite things on this camera is the slow motion capabilities. Not all slow-mo is created equal, and this one feels smooth as butter. I'd probably say that it's my favorite camera under $10,000 that I've shot slow-mo with. Just super easy to use and really solid results. Rolling shutter is actually pretty minimal for this type of camera as well. Definitely a lot better than my A7S. And then we have image stabilization. Here's with the stabilization off, and then with it on. For the most part, it's downright excellent, unless you're walking forward or backward in some cases. In this case right here, you can see that it's got this weird, annoying shifting back and forth in the image, even though I am not making that movement. But in every other case that I used it in, it worked really well. So it's just something that you need to be conscious of and work around. But then we come to low light, which is where I wasn't impressed. It's sort of typical here. It's not bad, but compared to the low light monster that is the A7s II, it's downright terrible. It is a micro four thirds sensor, so there you go. For your noise level edification, here's a lens cap test. The highest ISO I would go on with this camera from my test is 3200. Everything past that just looked gross, so another thing to keep in mind. And finally, I put my A7s II side by side with the GH5 using different colored lights and a contrasty image, then pushed both of the images hard in post with the grade to see which would break first, and the A7s II is definitely the one that's breaking first. The GH5 is holding up a lot better, and that's due to the 422 and 10-bit. We're getting a lot of artifacting and banding in the A7s II, and the GH5 is actually holding together surprisingly well. I really pushed these images hard, as you can see, shifting all the colors around and really trying to break them as much as I possibly could. Either way, the GH5 is $700 cheaper and completely holds up, and in some cases surpasses the A7s II. Overall, I would say that the GH5 is an intuitive and easy to use camera with solid image quality, great slow motion features, and it is absolutely geared towards filmmakers. Panasonic has definitely been listening to what their users actually want in an upgrade, so in the end, I think this is an excellent upgrade to the GH4, which personally, I only used the GH4 once and then moved on and didn't want to use it again. It was not my type of camera, although it's great for the price. It just wasn't one that I would use, but not in this case. I'm currently seriously considering buying a GH5 for myself, if not just for the slow-mo alone. So should you buy a GH5? In my opinion, if the micro four thirds doesn't bother you, you need something at that price, and you don't need something that's crazy good in low light, this would be a perfect camera for you. But that's it, a quick overview of sorts for the new GH5. As always, if you're looking to buy this camera, it's always a good idea to rent it first. Don't just take my opinion. You wanna actually try the camera and see if it really is the right fit for you. And to help you out with that, Lens Pro has hooked us up with a coupon code for you guys. Just use FilmRiot20 for 20% off any order over $275, which is only good till May 12th, so definitely jump on that. And I'll see you guys next week when I realize that the window isn't a real window.